Broxhead Motors, main Mazda distributors with comprehensive stores and service facilities. Full range of vehicles in stock. Come and test drive at Broxhead Motors, Lindford Road, Borden. Telephone Borden 2484.
From Midhurst in Sussex, we present Opinions Unlimited. Ladies and gentlemen, here's your chairman, Cliff Michelmore.
Welcome to the last of this series of Opinions Unlimited, and we've waited until the last to come to one of the loveliest parts of the whole of the Southern Television area. We've come to Midhurst in Sussex. Midhurst, it's called that because it's in the middle of forests and woodlands and trees, and they've got yews and cedars and oak and beech and everything. And we are in the oldest and most revered of all the prime inns of the world, said Hilaire Belloc in one of his expansive moments, and he had a few of those in his life. The Spread Eagle, which is where we find ourselves, takes its name from the crest of the medieval lords, the lords of Cowdray, now of course Cowdray, and it was here in Elizabethan days that the Queen and her lords came back after their hunting for feasting and merriment. We've brought a lord with us too, Lord Cudlipp, Hugh Cudlipp, whose life I think is best summed up by the title of one of his books some 25 years ago, Publish and Be Damned. Well, he's published and be damned all his life from the age of 14 when he was a reporter. 10 years later, he was the youngest editor, I think, ever of a national newspaper and ended up as the chairman of the Daily Mirror Group. Next to him is Angela Huth, who started our life as a painter, abandoned that for journalism and photography and television as a reporter. She's written, I think, 3 novels, a book of short stories, which is about to be published in the United States of America in September. She's also writing a television play to fill in the while. She, like me, was very privileged indeed to have for a boss for quite some time Sir Charles Curran when he was the Director General of another place at the BBC. He's now the Managing Director of Viz News, a Director of Nationwide Building Society. He was, I will let you into a secret, a rugby referee, of course rugby at one time, but he's written a book on the philosophy and practice of broadcasting, which is coming out in September. We're looking forward to it, and we're looking forward to having their opinions tonight, and your opinions and your questions. Let's begin with William Gould. Mr. Gould, come on.
What is the panel's opinion of washing hanging out for public view?
Oh, do you hang yours out for public view?
Only the frilly bits.
You hang the frilly bits out for... Do people go in for that down in a posh place like Midhurst?
Well, they try and hide it, I think.
Do they?
Yeah.
Oh. Hang out the washing on the Midhurst line. Come on. What's your opinion of this? Hugh, come on.
Well, I'll tell you a very quick story. When I was born in a place called Cardiff, and my mother was, like all the women in that street, which was a very humble street called Lisvane Street, was a tremendous snob. And when her sons went from Cardiff to Manchester and subsequently to London, editing newspapers, they came back with rather better laundry than the labourers. And there were 2 lines of laundry in 118 Lisvane Street, and when my elder brother came back, his went on the top line and mine went on the second, because I was only in Manchester. But in theory and practice, I'm against hanging out washing on the line, and particularly the Swede Street line, which didn't work.
No, it didn't. Angela, come along.
Well, I think it would be a great help to me, in that I'm one of those people with an absolutely insatiable curiosity about the details of people's lives, and I play a private game with myself. I just look at somebody in the front row of the audience, and try to see how much I can guess about them that's right before they've ever opened their mouth to me. Guess what they've had for breakfast, you know, trivial things as well as serious ones. Now, if the gentleman sitting opposite me with a black tie with blue diamonds on it hung his washing out and I happened to pass his house, I might be amazed to find that he had red and white striped boxer underpants. And I'd learn a great deal more about him than I would possibly from a long and polite conversation. And so I think it would be enormously useful, certainly to the novelist and to the observer of other people.
I like the straight lines. I don't like those things that go round and round and round like whirligigs. Charles, what about you?
I thought Hugh was going to answer this one by saying that the more dirty linen that's hung out, the better and the quicker. I thought he missed his cue on this one. But
well, there's a certain amount of dirty linen in the BBC at the moment, I know.
We can come back to that later and have a good one. But quite seriously, absolutely seriously, Cliff, there is a time in a man's life when he has to learn the difference between A and B and C cups. And what better way? What better way than on the linen line?
Well, we're not going to take a quick shortcut of Lady Curran, who happens to be sitting in the audience, I have to tell you. Thank you. Are you satisfied with that?
I'm quite satisfied.
Oh, yes, so am I. I think we'll move on now to John Cousins, who's down the front here. Mr. Cousins.
In the old days of newspapers, editors weren't afraid of rocking the boat. So much news nowadays seems to come straight from PR offices, but more or less unexamined by the editor. And we learned the truth, maybe years afterwards, from a journalist's book or quite gratuitous leak. Would you like to say anything about that?
Well, let's begin with Charles Curran.
Well, I could say a word about this. You see, I've worked towards PROs, asking them questions. And I've also had a PRO, a very, very good one indeed, George Campy, who used to work in Fleet Street. Now, the problem for George was that as soon as Fleet Street knew he was any kind of a PRO, they said, we won't touch him, we really want the boss. That's exactly the way we used to work towards any PRO. Deep distrust. All you can do with a PRO is to ask him what they say are the facts, and then you go and ask a lot of other questions about them. I would simply not accept that any publisher of news is going to be subject to the dictation of a public relations officer. Now, they may do their best to, shall we say, guide you along the correct interpretation. You very often don't take that correct path, and I'm sure that you would agree.
Now, Angela, what do you think?
I think I must be very naive because I never know when a story in a newspaper does come from a PR office or whether it's just a straight story. In fact, I was amazed to hear only this weekend from somebody who should know that the whole resignation of Jimmy Carter's cabinet was a PR story. It was established by
Angela,
PR people.
Come on.
Well, I mean, I don't know whether to believe it or not. I don't know enough about the PR world. I only know that when I was a journalist, I shunned PR people like the plague and wouldn't have liked to be one myself. And when I was taken out to lunch and people tried to bribe one or suggest things to one, I absolutely would never take up their suggestions and regard it indeed as a form of lazy journalism, just to take a PR story.
Mr. Cousins, what do you want? A few more rumbustious editors who are not frightened to go out on a limb and be investigative, or what?
I think I probably used the wrong word in saying playing PR. I mean, the government departments do it, where I have a feeling all the time that we're being manipulated rather than allowed to form our own opinions.
The news is being managed?
Yes.
There is absolutely no doubt that attempts are made to put a particular gloss on the news. There is no doubt that from time to time stories are originated in government in order to blot out other stories which are actually more interesting. And the journalist's job is to make quite sure that the story that's intended to be blotted out is published as high as possible up the page or as high as possible up the bulletin. And I have been responsible for doing that for as long as I can remember.
Hugh Cudlipp, speak up and be damned.
Well, no, I speak up and I might be praised. The question is a very interesting one because the point is, do the public think that news is manipulated? Now, my opinion is this, that public relations people do their finest job in favour of public relations people. I think that they gravely exaggerate their influence. They make claims which are just not able to be substantiated. I know of no, let us take some of the big exposures of the past couple of years very rapidly. I mean, did Harold Evans, the editor of the Sunday Times, excuse me, was he dominated by the public relations department of distillers in his campaign about thalidomide? I didn't see any reflection of that in the newspaper. Were various exposures of various things in the Daily Mail, which was a very good investigative newspaper until it made a very big mistake, and is now a little silent, but I hope its courage will return. No, sir. With affection to you and Midhurst, I do not believe that, and I worked on several newspapers, I even worked for Lord Beaverbrook, and certainly public relations departments had no effect there. I think that it is the public relations people who pretend. But on the other hand, if a public relations man said, look, there's a beautiful picture of a beautiful actress arriving with nothing on in the second lost luggage department, well, then papers do tend to say, thank you very much for telling us.
And they end up on page 3.
On trivial...
Not in your day.
Clifford, on trivial events, I think they have some helpful effect. But on serious matters, I know of no case.
I wonder if any of our audience think that the news is manipulated or managed. How many? Is there anyone who agrees or disagrees? Yes, lady right in the middle there. Yes, madam.
I think the news does a lot of damage. I think that we get it too soon these days. In the old days, when something happened, it was perhaps a week before you heard of it, and the heat had gone out of it. But now, the
it's too
baker's
quick,
strike.
is what you're saying.
Yes, the
People
baker's
are chasing
strike.
after
We're
it
going
too
to
quick.
have a baker's strike, and straight away, wham!
You have a baker's strike.
You're in the middle of it.
Right. Come on, Hugh.
Yeah, but what you're saying is that we should hear of the relief of Mafeking a fortnight later. I would rather like to hear the news when it happens, whether it's good or bad, you see. And I don't matter whether it's good or bad.
Come on, Charles.
Well, there's a great counter-argument here. You know that we can get it to you quickly, and if we don't, you say, why are they not doing it? What's the game? Who's up to something?
Why are they
That's the great problem. Why are they gagging us?
Have we got anyone else who wants to chip in on this? Yes, the gentleman in the middle. I thought somebody else was handing on it. Could you just stand up? It's just because we can't see you buried in the...
I think the point that she's trying to make is that the news is made partly by rushing into print about something. When there's a tendency for an occurrence to occur, as it were, it's made news of, and it helps along the event to occur.
There we are.
Well, you see, you're at a very fundamental question here. If you're living in a democratic society, you have to ask, ought people to know what is going on, or ought it to be kept from them? Once you say it should be kept from them, you're in a bottomless pit of treachery.
Angela, do you want to say something on that?
I think there's too much news. I think we have too many bulletins too often. And there are newsaholics among us. I mean, those who can't miss a news bulletin.
Me. Me. Yes, gentleman there.
Yes, would the panel not agree that certain items of news, if withheld from the media, would not advertise the perhaps bad things which they are about, i.e. terrorism, not encouraging people to do the things because they know they're going to get more publicity because it's reported quickly and so on? Would that not, should that not be withheld?
Hugh?
Can I tell a very rapid story about this? This is sort of the suppression of the ugly and the withdrawal of what is inconvenient and unpleasant. During the war, for the only time in my life, I was... in the last 2 years of war, I was editing what are called official publications. A job not unlike Sir Charles Curran's and with the same moral obligations, which, if I may say so, he brilliantly fulfilled in his time. I would like to say that because I believe it. Now, what happened is, towards the end of the war, all the pictures came up about the appalling treatment of the Jews in Auschwitz, Buchenwald, and other places. Now, I was running at this time, though an infantry officer seconded to do something, perhaps, I don't know, it's arguable, more important, I don't know. They told me to do it. I put all these pictures in all these papers, and a lot of toffee-nosed officers thought it was all frightfully vulgar and terrible and frightful. I thought, good God, this is what the war is about. I'm coming to the question of inconvenient and unpleasant news. I'm against all forms of suppression, and if newspapers, and if the BBC, as in my opinion recently, made a mistake, I would prefer the rare error to a total safe suppression.
Well, now let's move on to...
Can I just say...
Yes, do.
I wouldn't agree with that, but we can argue that later, perhaps.
But you agreed with the bit when I praised you.
Of course.
There was no interruption
about
there.
the BBC mistake.
We accept that bit. Now we've got Nicholas Roberts, have we? Where are you? Sorry.
Why is it that nowadays, as can quite often be the case, people who don't work particularly hard at school might pick up jobs with much higher salaries than those of people who do work hard at school?
What an unfair question.
Ooh, I say. May I ask if you're at the O or A level stage?
No.
So you're, what, 16 or so, are you? About that. I say. Charles Curran, I mean, what
Well,
have you...
know, I share some of the indignation in this question. I worked jolly hard at school. I was never paid anything like as much as Hugh. Now, the only thing I...
But he was an editor at 24.
Well, the only thing I don't know is whether he worked hard at school, and what I want to know is, what did he?
I did no work at school at all. I was incapable, and no schoolmaster could get me interested in everything. And you know, have faith in the future. You will find that the best jobs go to those who were most ignorant when they were young. Don't worry, everything will come all right.
Angela.
They do, but I'm afraid they only go to in the long run you get the jobs, and it's usually a very, very long run. I mean, I'm still running, waiting for the best jobs and for some decent money. And the point is that if you haven't worked hard at school, you can leave and you can take a job which appears to give you a lot of money when you're 18. It doesn't seem so much when you're 35. And so if you've been working hard at school and you go on to university, whatever it is, and you get some sort of a qualification, because unfortunately nobody, with the exception of very, very few people, for instance in television, in journalism, in my world, will ever give the young and inexperienced a chance. This is what we're lacking. And if you haven't got experience, don't expect, unless you're very lucky, to get a chance.
What do you want to become, Nicholas?
No idea at the moment.
Yeah. Do you have anyone in mind when you put this question about people getting highly paid? What sort of people do you reckon are highly paid at the end of the day?
Well...
Journalists, like Angela Huth.
Journalists and not school teachers.
Not school teachers?
Those are the intelligent ones.
Oh. I see. Is there a schoolmaster in the house who would like to... What? His father? Oh, is he? Oh. Well, Father, come along. It isn't often that we have a father and son sitting next to each other where A can either put down B or say yes.
Well, I've always maintained that my son's very perceptive and he realises my intelligence and poverty. I can't say enough.
What a very understanding father you've got. I only wish I could say that to my son. Anyway, now let's go to
May I just say a serious point about this? That I think that all of us realise that particularly the profession of teaching, and I would like to say this very quickly, is grossly underpaid. I mean, the future of this or any other country is in educating people, O-levels, this, anything like. And I do think that the priority given in this country to the teaching profession is abysmally and criminally and stupidly low.
One other thing on that. I mean, teachers may be underpaid. I come from a teaching family, and I say that with some feeling. But I would say that the people that are most underpaid in this country are engineers.
So would I.
Right. Now, on that note of agreement, we'll move on to Mrs. Joy Bruce. I beg your pardon. Can you stand up? Because I don't think we can quite see you, Mrs. Bruce. I'm sorry about this.
Nowadays, thousands of people, either sadly or deservedly, are having to leave their homes and their countries at very short notice. And I'm wondering what the members of the panel would put into a suitcase if they had to do just that.
Now, here you are. You're faced with the most appalling problem by Mrs. Bruce. You suddenly have to leave home. What do you take with you? What are the first things you pick up? It'd be very interesting what they'd leave behind, isn't it, really? Angela, what would be the first thing you picked up?
Well, I don't think I'd use up my one suitcase with practical things, because you can always replace a toothbrush or whatever. As somebody who's sort of totally nostalgic and sentimental, I think I'd take something I'd spent a lot of time doing and that meant a lot to me. And I'm afraid to say it would be my photograph albums, so that I could look back on the past and remember all too clearly what I'd left. I'd equally take my old letters from people to remember times past, and indeed I'd take my camera to record the time's future.
Hugh.
We're leaving quickly, we've got to pack a bag quickly. Well, let's assume that this would happen tomorrow. My contents, I think, Clifford, would be a small bottle of Daddy's sauce, and I'm quite serious about that. You go to hotels and you say, oh, may I have some sauce? And they say brown or red, meaning...
That's right.
So there'd be a lot of Daddy's sauce. The next thing would undoubtedly be a small bottle, this is true, I do this, a small bottle of pickles, not very big, but a small bottle of real pickled onions, which you can get in Sussex, where they're very good. The third item, and I've been to Labour Party conferences and Tory Party conferences for almost all my life, thank God, not any longer. And when you go to the Metropole Hotel in Brighton, whatever it is, you can get the bottle, but you can't get the bottle opener. And I've gone around for 25 years with a bottle of Daddy's sauce, pickles, a bottle opener, and the other thing is a tin opener. Because if you arrive in a place too late, you can buy a bottle of sardines and a loaf of bread and open the tin and have a very good time. Those would be my priority. The other one, I must add now, would be Crossman's diaries, because I think I ought to read them to know all that was wrong about the Labour government, and I haven't got round to it.
We've got quite a wide selection here. Charles Curran, what are you going to take?
Well, you see, this is a practical question for me, because I do it every so often. I leap out and off on some journey, and I take a razor with a blade. There's nothing more infuriating than to arrive in a place without a razor and have to use an electric shaver, I hate them, and to arrive even more with a razor without a blade, because that's no damn good to anybody. Then I would pick up suntan lotion, because I assume I'm going to a hot place. Is that right?
You're ticking them off. Do you have a list?
He does. You
Oh, of course I've got a list. I've got a list, yes, of course I have. Yes.
Oh, go on. How long is the list?
Oh, it's about that long.
Oh, that's all right. Keep going.
But why the razor blade? Is this in case you might want to commit suicide?
You can't see
Let
it
him
now.
go through his list.
You can't see it now. I got a beard.
Let him go through his list.
Then I got to remember the shaving brush, because that usually stays outside. If I forget the shaving brush, I'm sunk too. Then I've done the suntan lotion, haven't I? That's absolutely important.
Terribly unromantic.
Isn't it? Of course, I told you it was
My
practical.
wife would take
an alarm clock, because I'm incapable of waking up.
An alarm clock?
Yeah, alarm clock, that's got to be there. A shortwave radio, because I'm never out of touch with the news. And if I really think very hard, and I shall get skinned for this afterwards, I pick up the photograph of my wife and child on the desk.
Oh, good. Now, Mrs. Bruce, what are you going to take with you? Can you just stand up? Tell us what you'll take, very quickly.
I agree with Miss Huth. I would certainly take photographs of the family in my house and so on. I was really thinking in terms of having to get out of the country, as various people are having to do now, probably never coming back again. I'd also take quite a lot of makeup, I think, so that when I was having to face border guards and people like that, I was a morale booster.
Well
I
done.
was looking my best.
Well done. You'll make sure the border guards see you properly made up.
Same as me, never appear unshaven. I mean,
that's it. And now Pippa Bevan, who's down the front here. Yes.
We're told that every country gets the government it deserves. Does the panel think this applies to local as well as to national governments?
How many local government officials have we got here? Nobody's admitting to it. Nobody in Midhurst admits to it. Are you in local government by any chance?
I was a parish councillor until recently.
Oh, you got kicked out or you left?
No, I left.
You left. Oh.
But I think they're the one bit of local government that really is super.
Right. Do you think... come on, Hugh. Do you think we get the local government we deserve as well as the national government?
Well, yes, I do. And I'm one of those people who believe that we're not all that badly governed. You know, I think that the national government, I mean, isn't all that frightfully bad. I mean, the present government is doing exactly what the last government did about the exact problems. There's no great change in policy at all.
But what about local government?
And I think that local government, which you're concerned with... Now, I'm a great reader of the... I live in Olneybourne and I read all the local papers.
That's just down the road, I have to tell you. About 8 miles.
8.5 miles down the road. I find that the local councils do a pretty good job. What I would like to see in local councils to do a better job is that where you have a preponderance of one party, which is always in the south of England Tory, and in the north of England Labour, I think that more power and responsibility should be given to the smaller party. I mean, I don't want to be too serious about that now, but I do think it's very important. And I think that the veracity of local government would increase immediately, and I think it should increase, if the party which won overwhelmingly... I mean, anybody who stood as a socialist in Chichester is obviously insane, you know. Anybody who stands as a liberal is partially insane or already certified. And I think that in the north, where the same thing happens with socialists, that local government, and that's what you're talking about, would have greater veracity and would be the government we deserve more if they gave more power and participation in committees to the party that lost.
Angela Huth, you interested in local government?
Well, I must say, it isn't a subject that occupies my mind a tremendous amount.
But isn't that one of the problems that you're really raising, that it doesn't exercise people's minds to the extent?
I think partly, yes.
Mm.
Well, it exercises our minds when it affects us, as I'm sure we all realise, something to do with local traffic lights or whatever it is. My husband was actually partially responsible for the very complicated one-way system in Oxford, which he's never lived down.
Oh, I'm looking after. Forward to meeting him.
However, I tried to be interested in local government. It's easier in the country than it is in a town. And at the time of the election, I went along with tremendous enthusiasm to vote for a Liberal member, only to find that there wasn't one. So I said to my husband in the polling booth, what do I do now? There isn't a Liberal member. And he said, don't talk in the polling booth. And so I voted along with his party.
It's a reflection, isn't it? You didn't know who you were going to vote for before you went there. You didn't know who was standing in local elections. Sir Charles Curran.
This is really quite dismaying. Not dismaying in the sense that it's a surprise, but that one should be able to talk in degrees of lack of interest in local government. What do? Education. Very substantial responsibility. Admittedly, a great part of the money comes from central government, and a good deal less is going to come from central government in the future. Police. It's a local responsibility. It's not a central responsibility. Highways, water, all these things are local. Amenities, local. And yet, the vote is, on average, 30% in the elections. And all these things depend on people who are elected by 30% of the electorate. Now, the problem really is to make people interested, and I don't know how you do it.
No, well, on that note, I'm afraid we have to come to an end of our Opinions Unlimited here in Midhurst. Thank you very much indeed. Go out and vote in your local elections. You might get back in. You never know your bad luck. Thank you very much indeed. Hugh Cudlipp, Andrew Huth, and Sir Charles Curran. Thank you all very much indeed. I hope you've enjoyed this series of Opinions Unlimited. We certainly have. We hope to see you again. Goodbye.
In just a moment, Southern News Extra, and that will be followed at 11:15 by another hilarious episode of Soap. And then at 11:45 you can see our late film. It's The Nanny, starring Bette Davis and Wendy Craig.
It's the taste that refreshes the taste buds of the world. Just call it Wrigley's, call it Spearmint, call it gum.
Remember, we told you that salads were made for a certain salad cream. Well, if you're having any bother with your salads this year, it could very well be that you're using the wrong dressing. It could be you're not using Heinz salad cream. Salads were made for it.
Unwind, get a King Kong together, made with butter and cream. It's the taste of summer weather. Unwind, have a big King Kong together. Lion's made and make them with the greatest flavor ever. King Kong, 3 exciting flavors: vanilla and hazelnuts, mint and real chocolate flakes, chocolate and more hazelnuts. Lion's made a King Kong.
Southern Gas, may I help you?
When your gas bill's a bit of a surprise, remember Southern cares. Call us up. Our number's on your bill. Give us your account number and we'll get all the facts at our fingertips to quickly set your mind at rest. Of course, if you'd like to avoid surprises, pop into one of our showrooms and find out how monthly budget payments can take care of seasonal ups and downs. We'll usually find you the right answer.
Southern Cares.